Hi, everyone. My name is Emily McGlone, and I am the director of the international organization Peace Boat US, located in the United Nations Plaza in New York City. And it's my great pleasure to be here with all of you today, speaking about disaster risk reduction and also our work with Peace Boat supporting communities affected by natural disasters, and how we also use social media as a tool to raise awareness and engage participants in disaster relief work. So I'd like to start today by introducing a little bit about our organization. And for that, I'm going to share my screen and give a short presentation about Peace Boat's work as an international organization, as we have now been sailing the world on board our ship, promoting peace and sustainability for more than 38 years. So we have quite a history as an international NGO, and then I'll be introducing more about our work for Peace Boat's Disaster Relief Volunteer Center, PVV. So please enjoy this short presentation. I'll begin here with just a brief intro. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about our disaster relief work, but also outreach, local communication strategies, and social media tools. So first of all, for today's presentation, as an outline, we'll give an introduction to the organization's work overall, promoting peace and sustainability. What is PVV, the Peace Boat Disaster Relief Volunteer Center? Mobilizing and training volunteers, local communication, and then social media tools and how you can use that also for your work in the future. So Peace Boat is an international NGO, which I mentioned has been around for more than 38 years. It was founded in 1983 by university students, which is why it's wonderful to speak to young people who are engaged in these issues around sustainability and disaster relief and preparedness, because university students really are the ones who started this organization. We are an NGO and also a social business, which means that participants pay to go on board and travel on board our ship, which you can see here in the image, and that money gets recycled into our nonprofit activities. In 2017, we received the Nobel Peace Prize winner as part of ICAN, the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. We were also nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2008, and we currently sail with the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize on board the ship, using it as an advocacy tool, especially for nuclear disarmament and education, which also relates to our disaster relief work, as we work often in Fukushima, which was affected by the nuclear disaster in 2011 in Japan. We have sailed on more than 60 global voyages all around the world and more than 30 regional voyages. We have 1,000 passengers on each voyage. We like to call them participants because they are truly participating in the voyages, helping to organize events and lectures and workshops on board. And we visit over 100 ports of call in more than 80 countries during our global voyages for peace and sustainability. So Peace Boat believes in socially and environmentally responsible tourism. We believe that travel in itself can be a tool for positive and social political change. So we do this by creating and implementing best practices as we travel around the world, working with local communities and supporting Indigenous groups, women's organizations, youth advocates, and environmental practices as we travel around the world. Here's an example of our global voyages, where you can see Peace Boat's red line in the Northern Hemisphere, and there's a green line on the Southern Hemisphere, showing all of the countries that we visit. We have our main headquarters from Japan. On this right side of the map, you'll see Yokohama Port, which is our main port where Peace Boat always begins our global voyages. And as we travel to each country, we have guest speakers who come on board between each section of the voyage, speaking about various topics around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and many of the issues that they're facing and the geopolitical situation of the countries as we travel these 3 months around the world. On the side of our ship, we have the logo of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with this logo. These are the 17 goals supported by the United Nations to create a more sustainable future. And of course, disaster relief and preparedness and education is a big part of achieving the SDGs. We have a youth scholarship program, which I'll be sharing more about in a few moments. You can see more how young people like yourselves can also be involved in these programs. And we receive young people from all around the world traveling on board the Peace Boat with us. So to start this off, I'd like to share a short video of Peace Boat's work for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Great. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that short video about Peace Boat's work. You can see that we actually work on all 17 of these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to create a more peaceful and sustainable future for all that is inclusive. And Peace Boat also works very closely with the United Nations SDG Action Campaign, which is why we have the logo painted on the hull of the ship, so that every time our ship is pulling into port around the world, people recognize that we are working towards the SDGs. Peace Boat's main office is located in Tokyo, Japan, which many of you know has also suffered many natural disasters in recent years. But our other headquarters, where I'm located, is in the United Nations Plaza in New York. So I'd like to share a little bit about our work there and how we are engaging with the United Nations. Peace Boat holds what we call EcoSOC Status. It's the special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. We participate in conferences related to the SDGs, related to disarmament, education, disaster relief, and sustainability, especially focused on oceans and climate action. As we know, due to climate change, natural disasters around the world are increasing at an alarming rate. And it's very important that we work together with civil society and the United Nations to bridge that gap. Peace Boat, as an international NGO, because we hold this special status with the United Nations, we are able to bring then experts from the field, youth, local delegates, and also, of course, indigenous communities and those who are affected by climate change into the United Nations to have their voices heard by delegates who are making these important decisions on behalf of humanity. So the role of civil society at the United Nations for us is a very key and important role that Peace Boat plays in international relations. We believe also that our youth and all of our programs can give people an opportunity to participate globally in all of the activities around the UN SDGs. So Peace Boat US, where I'm currently the director, is a branch of the Peace Boat larger organization. We are based in New York, and we were founded in 2005 to support the liaison opportunities with the UN and to be able to coordinate these actions together with our United Nations partners. We believe that giving people and participants from Peace Boat Voyages an opportunity to also join advocacy campaigns are very important. So that's our role from the UN office in New York. And we hope that all of you can join us at some time when you're able to visit New York City and participate in some of these events with us. We also know that it's time to act, and we believe that this is a decade of action for the UN SDGs. So we truly want to take advantage from 2020 to 2030. This is a decade of action. And so as we work together with our partners, educating youth, raising awareness, and making sure that the young people of tomorrow are equipped with the tools and the education they need to then take part and become the leaders of future programs, organizations, and hopefully countries where they are then able to make those informed decisions for their governments. So for that, we decided to create the Youth for the SDGs Scholarship Program. This is a program for youth ages 18 to 30 years old. So for those of you who are watching this presentation, I really encourage you to apply if you are already interested in disaster relief and sustainability and community action. This would be a great program for you to take part in. We are working with young people to go around the world and visit many different countries. So I want to give a couple of examples of some of the places that we have visited and also some of the work that we are doing for disaster relief as well as community development. This is a photo of a group that we visit in Panama, which is an indigenous community called the Imara-IHG, and they live down the river from where the boat docks in Panama. So we often go to visit them and spend one night and do a homestay program to learn from indigenous culture. They recently had a natural disaster where one of their homes burned down because of a fire that occurred in the community. So we brought volunteers to come help with this disaster relief and help rebuild the home. So you can see here a couple of our volunteers and Youth for the SDG Scholars helping to bring buckets of cement and building materials and helping to replace all of the area that got burned down during this disaster. You can see here what the homes look like, and you can imagine what a fire would do to a thatched roof made of wood and straw in their communities. So one of the things we also want to think about is preparedness for the future as well. How can they prevent future disasters? And then how can we also help with disaster relief and when we have volunteers that come and help these local communities? We also have another indigenous community in Panama that we support, and this is the Kuna indigenous community, also based in Panama. And this is a program that we've been working on for more than 12 years. And their local community also has a lot of infrastructure and development programs that we have been asked by the community to support. So in this photo, you can see that we are building a sidewalk because of the heavy rains and floods during the rainy season in Panama, especially due to climate change, ever increasing rainfall. It was necessary to help repair and rebuild this sidewalk for the local community. So when we visit Panama, we also visit the United Nations. The UNDP headquarters is there in the City of Knowledge in Panama City. So we are often bringing our youth to see how the SDGs are being implemented locally. It's great to think about the Sustainable Development Goals on a grander scale, but then it's also important to see at the local grassroots level how they're being implemented in each country that we visit. We often also visit South America in Patagonia. Here is a project that we've been working on for many years. So we sail from Ushuaia in Argentina all the way through the Patagonia fjords up the coast to Chile. So this is our youth program for the SDGs that took place in 2019. We had 7 youth scholars who joined the program and worked on renewable and sustainable energy, as well as looking at climate change and the effects of the glaciers that are now melting due to the increased temperatures in Patagonia. It was interesting during this time, we had so many participants traveling with us on board the Peace Boat through the fjords of Patagonia and the glaciers. And so we went up to Punta Arenas, and during this time, there happened to be also a very large earthquake. This is in 2010, so a little bit earlier, there was a very strong earthquake that shook all of Chile, causing not only the earthquake damage, but also a tsunami. And so this was something that we had to work together with our local partners. Peace Boat has been visiting Chile during many of our global voyages. So we have various partners who work on the ground. And one of those partners is called CODEF. It's the National Committee to Protect the Flora and Fauna of Chile. So one interesting aspect is that when you're working on disaster relief, you always need a partner on the ground. It's important to be in touch with local communities to have the correct information and to find the best way to support those communities affected by natural disasters. In this case, there were more than 1,500,000 plus homes affected by this magnitude 8.8 earthquake in Chile. And then due to that, because of the tsunami that took place, so many coastal areas were washed away, homes were completely destroyed, and many families were left homeless. Peace Boat at that time, as I mentioned, we were sailing from Patagonia up the coast of Chile. And I was actually in Chile working in Patagonia and coordinating the disaster relief programs. And one of the communication tools that we realized was really important during this time was all of the phone lines had been basically saturated because Chile doesn't have such a strong network all the way in Patagonia. In the southern part of Patagonia, it's about 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers long in Chile. So it was very far from the capital of Santiago in Chile. And so because many of the phone lines had been damaged, I had to use Skype on Wi-Fi. So I was at the hotel on my computer for many hours a day, watching what was happening and being in touch with local community and using Skype through Wi-Fi to be able to communicate to landlines to talk to different partners. We also had volunteers on the boat who started to collect very basic needs, materials like blankets, water, toilet paper, sanitary materials, soaps, and other things that were needed by communities who didn't have just the basics. So we were collecting these items, and then we were able to offload them on the ship. We were not able to dock in the port in Valparaiso, so this also affected our travel. So you can see here, these blankets and disaster relief essential goods are being collected on the boat, but then normally our ship would be docking in the port of Valparaiso, which is the oldest port in Chile. But at this time, we had to have a small tender boat to bring those disaster relief volunteer materials to the community. So that was also a big change. We had to do something completely different and communicate with the port. Because of the aftershocks of the earthquake, we were not able to dock safely for our participants to disembark. And so we stayed on the ship and then unloaded the essential goods. So we collected more than 824 items to be deployed and given to the different communities that we visit. And we also started a fundraising campaign. So we collected more than $5,400 of emergency dollars that were raised for communities that were affected in Chile. And we did this on board the ship. And so our communication tools on board were creating, as you can see here, fundraising boxes to put at the main center of the ship, posters everywhere around, and helping our participants on board understand what was happening in Chile, why we were not able to dock the ship, but at the same time, recognizing the importance of immediately helping these local communities who are in need. So we had volunteers then in the port who are part of the local nonprofit organization CODEF, who helped us to receive the goods, and they brought trucks to the port where they received all of the materials and then were able to distribute it to the communities who were most in need. And by communicating with them, we were able to find out which areas needed to receive the goods first, and then to continue helping as much as possible as we saw communities recovering slowly throughout this disaster. So the Peace Boat Disaster Relief Volunteer Center was founded in 2011, which was right after the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear disaster in Japan. So we call that the triple disaster. It is part of our NGO Peace Boat group. So Peace Boat is a larger organization that runs the Peace Boat Disaster Relief Volunteer Center. And it was started specifically to help in Japan after that 2011 disaster. We mobilized more than 100,000 plus volunteers for disaster affected areas in Japan for the last 10 years. And we continue to volunteer and support international disasters around the world. We have relief projects in more than 62 affected communities in Japan, which I will show a map later so you can see a little bit where they are located throughout the country. And we've carried out relief programs in more than 31 countries worldwide through the volunteers and also through local organizations in each country that we visit. We believe at Peace Boat Volunteer Center, we have a few core values that we strongly like to support for our community development and disaster relief programs. One is that it takes people to support people. We really believe that the humanitarian effects of nuclear disasters or natural disasters are very consequential. So having people to support people is really important. Two, helping each other, making sure that we're doing the best we can to support each other, whether it be the volunteers on the ground or the people in need in the communities or government officials, because sometimes governments also are affected. I remember during the 2011 earthquake, many of the government officials in Japan actually lost family members or lost their homes, and they were unable to fulfill their own functions as government representatives, whether it be in the mayor's office or a higher governmental position. So Peace Boat sent volunteers to help in some of those areas, whether it be taking notes in the community and feeding back to the government officials, answering phone calls, replying to emails, whatever they needed help with. We were there to make sure that the government partners can do their job as well as volunteers on the ground. And number three is leaving no one behind. Everyone who is affected by a natural disaster needs support. And we want to make sure that even those who might have disabilities or are unable to communicate in certain ways or unable to find help with their own family members, that they don't get left behind. So those are some of the core values of Peace Boat Volunteer Center. We also have a partnership with the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Following the 2014 partnership agreement with the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is known as UNISDR, Peace Boat's been making a proactive member of its Making Cities Resilient campaign and hosting events on board the ship and also in the ports that we visit. So as part of this Resilient Cities campaign, we are seeking to work with the UN to create global awareness of disaster risk reduction benefits and empower people to reduce their vulnerability to hazards. Its Making Cities Resilient campaign aims to raise the profile of resilience and disaster risk reduction amongst local governments and urban communities worldwide. So for example, we had youth from Africa traveling on board the Peace Boat and promoting this disaster resilience in December 2014. We also had young leaders from Asia, including Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, and other countries who gathered together to share experiences and best practices related to disaster risk reduction. These programs are so important to create local and regional experiences where they can exchange best practices and challenges so that they can compare what are the ways that they overcame these challenges and what are the solutions for some of these ideas that are coming about during each of these natural disasters. Of course, we have many volunteers who are helping to provide these materials and disaster related goods to the community. So we have a UPA program. It's the United People's Alliance program, where we collect donations and then bring them on board the ship and then deliver them to the communities that we visit. We also have many ongoing projects. So for example, supporting the typhoons in Japan around Chiba and Fukushima. There's also been many heavy rains and flooding in areas that have not normally been affected by so much rain and flooding during these times. Then there was also disasters such as the Mauritius oil spill, which many of you I'm sure heard about in 2020. So community support projects and raising awareness about these different issues. And as you can imagine, climate change is now really affecting the world in so many ways and increasing natural disasters globally. We also work on mobilizing and training, so providing talks and seminars at diverse venues on disaster volunteerism. And in 2013 and 14 alone, we carried out more than 50 talks across Japan. So encouraging people to learn how they can get involved. And this is also a really important communication tool in providing disaster relief training and supporting these communities. We also coordinate this organization for Corporate Volunteer Network, CVN. So that's strengthening cross-network relations for effective disaster relief for corporations, as they can volunteer their time and support local community development and disaster relief. This is the map that shows all of the communities throughout Japan, and then also some of the places around the world that we've supported with the relief projects by Peace Boat and PVV. So you can see we've visited many countries and many cities throughout Japan. And we really believe in mobilizing and training. And as we continue these training programs, we realize, we've had more than 3,432 people attending more than 74 training events across Japan, from volunteering to shelter management. And we've also created activity reports about all of the different things that we're doing, which are available online, which hopefully you can all spend some time after this presentation to look and learn more about these reports and learn about what we're doing, so you can see how you can also maybe be involved in the future. We also believe that the local communication is very important. So we created for example, a temporary newspaper as one of our communication tools. When the 2011 disaster happened in Japan, many community members were left without any cell phone service, without any TVs for news or radio. So we created a local newspaper to ask people how they are overcoming their challenges, what are the new opportunities there are for funding or disaster relief or food distribution or materials that could be provided. And this newspaper was not only a way to provide this necessary information to community members, but we hand delivered the newspaper, as you can see in the photo here. So sometimes just bringing a volunteer with a friendly smile and information that is useful to each person, house by house, in the temporary housing and shelters after a disaster can really bring a lot of relief to people who are in need. And not only that, but it's a way to learn about what are the challenges they're facing, asking them how they're doing that day and what do they need, or any challenges that they have with water or food supply, or during the winter, a lot of people needed extra blankets or a way to stay warm. So we use the newspaper as a communication tool for important information and also as a way to check up on the local residents. I thought this was a really great communication tool, so I wanted to highlight this in our presentation today. And you can see that many people were over 65 years old and living alone in these temporary housing shelters. So they really need someone to come and check up on them and to see if they have any medical needs or any immediate needs that volunteers can help with. So using social media, we also have created a blog on our ongoing projects. So creating programs online that people can participate in and learn about what we're doing day by day. We also have done fundraisers for different typhoon-related damage or heavy rain support. We've done all kinds of awareness raising through our social media, providing photos and images and relevant articles on what's happening around the world in recent disasters, and also using Facebook and LinkedIn and our Peace Boat website as tools for social media communication. As you can imagine, some of the posts and related information, if you share it on Facebook, you can also mark yourself, check that you are safe during a natural disaster. So using social media in that way to raise awareness. I often have found, unfortunately, that there are many friends who are experiencing natural disasters. Even before I hear about it on the news, I might see that someone has been checked safe during an earthquake in Japan, for example, or during a typhoon in the Philippines. And these are really important tools that we can use to raise awareness. and at the same time to help educate people about what's happening around the world. We've also created these emergency funds for ongoing projects launched via Facebook. So you can see when you create a Facebook fundraiser, for example, people can donate to that fundraiser, and then you can invite other friends and other partners to donate as well. And you can see when people are making donations. So it does encourage more donations through that time. So that's a great way to use social media. You can also think about posts on emergency funds to inform users of how the funds are being distributed. What are the things that they're lacking at the time? A lot of people often want to donate, but they don't know how or what is needed. So using social media can also help raise awareness about what is actually needed during these disasters. And as I mentioned, using the safety check for check-ins during disasters and the push notification for asking users if they are safe is a great way to communicate if people might not have a lot of cell phone service. Sometimes just these short communication tools can let everybody know that you are safe or that you need support. So that's really important. We recently used this Facebook fundraiser also for emergency fund and disaster relief in the Midwest in the United States due to the tornadoes in Texas and in Kentucky and other areas of the Midwest in the United States. We are also creating fundraisers online. We did a special Christmas fundraiser with a nonprofit, Parties for Peace, which I actually founded in 2002 as a way to have music and art events to raise funds. So we did a live Christmas special benefit concert on twitch.tv, which is another social media platform that you can use. And people could donate through the twitch.tv platform to raise money and awareness for families that were affected, especially during the holidays, when they might not have a home to go back to, and of course have so many things that are in need. So finding creative ways to use fundraising online can also be something that you can contribute to. You might not be able to host a large event, especially during these times with the pandemic, but you can always host benefit events or online programs that can help raise awareness. We also use social media in so many ways, but then there are some cons, of course. You know, pros and cons are always important to evaluate. So the pros we put here is that you have widespread international attention, some successful emergency funds and fundraising, heightened awareness for disaster relief and climate change affected areas. The cons could be there should be sometimes destroyed infrastructure due to the disaster, which means there might be little to no connection for communication on site or locally. But now that we have sometimes phones that have apps, the apps could be a positive side, but maybe not fully connected. And then sometimes there's, misleading information. So it's really important to double check information that's shared online. As we all know, fighting misinformation is a big part of the work. And then, of course, older, isolated, for in our case was Japanese population after disaster, but could be anyone in a community might not have access to these social media tools. So you can't expect everyone to be able to use them all the time. So there are pros and cons to using social media, and it's important to evaluate those as you're using them during a natural disaster. So we encourage all of you to look at the Peaceboat US website and also the Peaceboat Disaster Relief website and learn more about our organization. We have so much information that we can share with you through our online links. So I will be sharing some of those with your professor to review with you during this session. And I hope that you will join us in being a volunteer on board and also maybe part of our disaster relief activities. So I wanted to share a couple of ways in which you can get involved. Peaceboat in general, as an international organization, you can get involved in 3 to 4 ways. First of all, we have our English teachers and Spanish teachers as a second language who are able to travel on board the Peaceboat for free as a volunteer. So you can check out our website and learning how to be a volunteer on board the Peaceboat. So I will also share those links. We also have translators, what we call communication coordinators, because in every country that we visit, as you can imagine, we have to communicate in different languages. So if you can speak English, Spanish, or Japanese, Korean, Chinese, those are all languages that we often need on board the ship and in the communities that we work with. So we encourage you to join our communication coordinator presentation. And then we have also an internship program in our New York office and also in Japan, where you can apply for a virtual internship at the moment. Since the pandemic started, we offer students the opportunity to work with us every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. we are working with the United Nations partners and participating in events, often related to sustainable development goals, education, as I mentioned before, oceans and climate change, and then also disaster relief and preparedness and education for trainings. So if you are interested in that, please do reach out through our website. I will share the link so you can all apply online. We have a rotating, I would say, deadline process. So every 3 months, we are welcoming interns to join us at our office. And you also have the opportunity to participate in United Nations conferences and events through this internship program. We also have a chance for you to travel on board and be part of our regular programs by being a paying participant. So of course you can join us and come on board and travel the world with Peaceboat at any time, even without being accepted as a volunteer. You can also fund your own way to travel on board. And so all of those programs will be taking place on board the ship. Our normal global voyages are 3 months long. So you can join anywhere during the 3 months, or you can join for the full voyage. So our next voyage, we hope, will be coming up this year soon. We have not been sailing during the pandemic, as we want to be as safe as possible with our programs around the world. But we do hope that you can join us in the future and be part of these important programs, mobilizing young people and creating awareness for disaster relief, but also creating a more sustainable future for all. So thank you so much for joining us for this short presentation. I hope it was informative and gave you some insight to Peaceboat's work as an international NGO that works on so many issues, including disaster relief and education. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to share them with your professor, and I can try to answer as quickly as possible by email. And let's use all of these tools to help raise awareness and to work together for a more sustainable future. So I thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing more about this program and the university projects that you're all working on and how we can work together for a more sustainable future. Thank you so much.